Hello everyone, this is Rexer of the YouTube channel NotQuiteThereGaming, bringing you another Warframe video, finally. Banshee, which is the build I'm going to present to you today, gave me a few headaches in making, not only in herself, but also in securing the forma for her because of the recent Orokin Void drop table jumbly fumbly wumblies, which resulted in some very unfortunate 9 Sicarus Prime barrel streaks on T3 Exterminate, until I realized that I like defense, and Orokin Void defense gives me what I want. So, yay for me, but it was quite painful getting there. Now, I'm gonna try to be brief, and for me that's still gonna be quite a lot of words because I like talking about video games, Warframe in particular. But let's try and get started as quickly as possible. Now, even if I want to be brief, we have to discuss a bit Banshee's origins. She is a Warframe that was launched with the launch of Open Beta about a year ago, which is also about the time I started playing Warframe. So this isn't going to be a new build, this isn't a new frame. Perhaps it is going to be a new take on Banshee, and particularly a new take on the use of newly released mods, sort of newly released mods like Orokin Vault mods and so on, in fitting Banshee. But we are also going to have to discuss A, Banshee's origins, and B, what that means for her role, because her role was the thing that gave me the most headaches in determining while I was trying to make this build. Firstly, her origins. When she was first released, she was considered the OP caster Warframe because of her ultimate specifically. It had a lot of range, it did a good amount of damage, and even then it still suffered against Grineer because their armor scales up pretty well for them and pretty badly for you. But people were still complaining a lot about her being extremely overpowered. This resulted in a nerf, if you will. It's a marginal nerf that removed her invulnerability during casting her ultimate. It still leaves her with the damage, it still leaves her with the good range, which when boosted is pretty fantastic range. But since that time, there have been other Warframes released, and some other Warframes tweaked. For example, Rhino. Rhino's ultimate didn't used to be so good. Now it is. And it contends pretty nicely, but not quite in the same category, as Banshee's ultimate. There's also Nova, which outclasses Banshee hands down in raw damage potential. So that leaves Banshee in a weird spot. So the thing that saves Banshee, in my opinion, that justifies you using Banshee, other than the fact that she is a simply gorgeous Warframe, with the Immortal Skin, with the Chorus helmet, I mean, just look at this. This is fucking fantastic. Like, this is by far my favorite Immortal Skin. Other than that, if you're not a maybe narcissistic or vain person like myself when it comes to my Warframes, then you will want to use Banshee if you want someone with, let's say, an increased amount of options. Banshee is not the best damage dealer. She has crowd control capabilities, Nyx is better at crowd control. In some situations she is also better at damage, but only in some situations. Nova is hands down better at damage, but Banshee has a little bit of both, which not only can she use alternatively, but she can use at the same time, I would say. So the best analogy that I came up with in regards to Banshee is that she is somewhat of a Swiss Army short sword. Now, why a short sword? Because a short sword, a short-bladed weapon, short heavy-bladed weapon, in my limited experience regarding history and weapons, is a primarily defensive weapon. It's a weapon with more defensive options than offensive options. It doesn't do as much damage. It isn't as offensively minded as, say, a longsword, which you could compare Nova to, for example. And Swiss Army because she has corkscrews and a screwdriver and can opener and all that sort of good stuff. So she's a versatile Warframe. She's not a quote-unquote best Warframe at anything in particular, but she's versatile. So with that long speech out of the way, let's get into the build itself. Banshee starts out with an unfortunate attack polarity for her aura. I say unfortunate because I like Energy Siphon in the aura polarity, but you can do with the attack polarity and slot perhaps Rifle Amp, which will boost the damage of her primary weapon. That synergizes well with a build that is focused on sonar and doing as much damage as possible with your primary weapon. But I prefer a tactical polarity in the aura slot for Energy Siphon. I also changed one of her ability polarities into a tactical polarity and gave her a defensive polarity for a total of 3 forma. You can make do with 2 formas, but I will get into it later as to why you shouldn't consider that straight up. Now, let's slot Energy Siphon, get that out of the way. Obviously, Energy Siphon plus 14 mod points. Reactor, she was actually the first Warframe I ever installed a reactor in, if you can believe that. And we've got a nice amount of 74 mod points to play with. First, we have her number 1 skill, which is Sonic Boom. Sonic Boom, no matter what you want to say to me, it doesn't deal good damage, okay? It will kill rabble, it will kill really low level enemies. Maybe with multiple castings you can kind of get away with using it at mid levels, maybe. But its primary focus, its primary use is using it as crowd control. It has a decent range to begin with, and when boosted it gets pretty crazy. It will knock enemies back a little bit and knock them down, which can lead to interesting opportunities to clear the pod, for example, clear the objective, get enemies away from one of your teammates, or push enemies off a ledge, which will instantly kill them, though I'm not exactly sure what happens to their drops at that point. This skill is fun and useful, even though it's not damaging. I would suggest you keep it. Not no matter what, but I would suggest you keep it. It is a very important part of Banshee and her abilities. Next we will have Sonar, which is a much easier sell when it comes to Banshee's abilities, because everyone loves Sonar, everyone needs Sonar. Now, a lot of people think that building around Sonar is a tough thing, and I would almost agree, though there are some weird considerations when it comes to Sonar and building around Sonar, which will make things a lot easier. But we will get into that later, so I don't mess up the structure of this video like I did on my last take. Next, we would have silence. Silence simply deafens enemies. It's situationally good for stealth missions, which aren't that big a thing so far. I've seen a few changes in the last patch that begin to make stealth missions a bit more interesting or viable, but we're not quite there yet, so sadly silence is completely out of the question. The next skill and the ultimate, which for many people is the reason why they take Banshee as a primary Warframe, is Soundquake. Now, Soundquake is a good ranged ultimate at about 20 meters unboosted, and it does a fair amount of damage. You can check the wiki for the amount of damage. It's apparently a point of contention right now if it does 5 pulses or 6 pulses of damage, so I can't tell you exactly how much it does, but it is a fair amount either way. And the interesting thing about Soundquake is that it stuns, it knocks back, it kind of staggers all enemies within its radius while you're casting it for a total duration of 6 seconds. This is Banshee's primary damage and large area crowd control. So we will be focusing a lot on Soundquake and on sonar as well. But we're gonna be doing some weird things about that. First of all, the no-brainer choice, the straight-up best thing to slot in Banshee is power strength. And we're gonna start with Blind Rage, the Orokin Vault only mod with the drawback. This boosts Sonic Boom. Let's not even talk about damage on Sonic Boom. It boosts Sonar's damage multiplier, and it boosts Soundquake's damage. So we want power strength. We're also gonna slot the former focus, now intensify, because I don't know why, which also gives a no downside power strength boost. This will give us maximum damage and maximum multiplier. Next, we want to combat the power efficiency problem, which we will do with Fleeting Expertise, also a Orokin Vault only mod. It also has a downside, and you're gonna see the weird choices I made in this build starting to show because of the power duration downside, which conflicts with sonar, but we will get into that once we slot all the mods. We also want to slot Streamline to give us as much power efficiency as possible. Now that we're done with power efficiency, we can get on to a slight attempt to combat this downside and slot something that will help us with power duration. Personally, I chose Constitution, which is a Nightmare Mode reward mod, because it has two effects, one which is knockdown recovery and the second which is power duration, of course, because I think Banshee really needs the knockdown recovery. She is a Warframe that is survivability challenged, let's say, in some situations, in a lot of situations. Anyway, that is it for power duration for this build. Weird, huh? But stick with me, please. Next, we will be slotting power range, which first we have stretch, which is the straight up power range increase. This helps sonic boom, sonar, and soundquake. Now that we've slotted stretch, we will be slotting the final mod in this build, but it is not the final mod that we will be slotting in this build, if that makes any sense. The last mod that you want to slot is interchangeable in my vision for Banshee. The mod that I recommend that you build around to begin with is redirection. Why redirection? Well, let's really get into Banshee now. Banshee is a brittle Warframe. A lot of people have accused me of making Nova extremely brittle and telling me that she needs added survivability, but I really don't see any problem with my build of Nova regarding survivability. I frequently outlive fully iron skin rhinos and frosts, and I remember an event not so long ago when I was in a mission with a frost and a rhino, and I was the one that had to keep rezzing them. And we finally died when I ran out of energy. So that's why I prefer the flow mod instead of added survivability on Nova. On Banshee, on the other hand, I think I may have doubled the amount of times that I've been downed in my entire career while I've been building Banshee, which is probably the source of half of my frustration that I've had to endure while building her. Quite disheartening, but it also means that you have to pick your weapons wisely when using Banshee. So I recommend that you start with redirection. Now, what does this mean for you? It means that you will have a decent amount of range on your skills. You will have the maximum amount of power strength on sonar and soundquake, and you'll have some survivability. But I also recommend that you consider slotting overextend instead of redirection once you have grown used to Banshee and once you can run around with her without getting in too dangerous situation. Overextend will greatly increase the range of sonic boom, sonar, and soundquake, which will make sonic boom from a reasonably useful crowd control ability into a very useful crowd control ability that can be used in potentially improbable situations. Now, with overextend, you have a range of 35 meters on sonic boom. Imagine that, knocking people down from 35 meters away. With just stretch, you would have 21 meters, which isn't that bad, but with overextend, you get 35 meters. Sadly, overextend also damages power strength. So, that is a slight problem, but not that big a problem. It will reduce the amount of damage done by Soundquake, but it also will increase the range of Soundquake to 47 meters. So everything in a 47-meter radius from you will be stunned during your casting of Soundquake, which, at higher levels of enemies, is pretty much the only use you will have for Soundquake anyway, because the damage will not be enough to kill people. So that is a very good thing. The increase in range for sonar will get it to a ludicrous 82 meters. But that's not as important as the effect of overextend on sonic boom and soundquake. Now, let's really get into sonar. With overextend, sonar's power, sonar's hit multiplier is reduced. What hit multiplier? I haven't even explained this skill. Well, when you cast sonar, it illuminates every enemy within its range on your minimap, and also gives them a bright red or orange, if you will, critical spot, weak spot, which, if you hit it, will deal increased damage to the enemy. Now, to begin with, this multiplier is plus 500% damage, which is quite a bit. If you just slot maximum power strength without overextend getting in the way, this multiplier will be plus 1145%, which is ludicrous. Not the rapper. This also means that if you really want to make good use of Banshee, you will have to pick a good weapon to synergize with sonar. Which weapons should you pick? Well, I would recommend Despair, which is not quite pinpoint, but if you get used to it, used to its firing arc, you can get it pretty close. Also, bows. Bows have been changed recently. The Paris is as old as Banshee itself, and I used to love it back in the day, but I was not aware of the extensive changes that have been made to bows recently. Rather, not that I was not aware, but I was not aware of how extensive the changes have been, how big an increase in crit chance and multiplier they have gotten. Also, the addition of actual penetration to shots instead of the weird body push thing they had before. It's turned bows into quite brutal killing machines if you can get a choke point. So, with this occasion, I would also like to apologize to a certain person, which I got a bit upset with because he tried to bring a sorry, I forget right now the name of the bow in the Stalker set. It's not Despair. Dread. Yeah, Dread. He tried to bring a Dread into an Orkin direct defense, and there is no choke points there. He really tried to sell me on that, but not in the most fortunate way. I mainly discounted him because I didn't believe bows could do significant enough damage to counteract the fact that they won't be killing that many people to begin with. I have since seen the error of my ways through personal experimentation, and again I would like to apologize to that one person. I now know how good slash damage is against infested and how much specifically slash damage the Dread can do to infested, though I was of course aware that slash damage is good against infested. So I heartily recommend bows when you are using Banshee. My personal favorite, though, because I am partial to puncture damage in every situation, is Paris Prime. Why bows? Why Despair? Because you need to hit those critical weak points again. Critical weak points supplied by sonar. Now, I said that you get 1145% extra damage with maximum power strength sonar. With overextend on, you will only get 845% extra damage. This is a bit of a problem, an unfortunate setback. That is also why the combination, use of redirection instead of overextend is a good choice. It's not only a defensive choice, but it is in this situation a choice that does not involve the use of overextend's downside. So with redirection you'll have increased survivability and maximum power for sonar and soundquake. With overextend you get increased crowd control from soundquake and sonic boom, but you don't really need maximum hit multiplier from sonar all the time. 845% extra damage, especially when you're hitting with despair or a bow, will pretty much kill everything in one shot. That is not extremely high level enemies, but a lot of people. Okay? A lot of people. So I recommend that once you're used to Banshee's weakness, once you're used to the fact that you are vulnerable while you're casting Soundquake, you use Overextend, especially in free roaming missions, because it gives you extra range and you don't really need that much extra punch against enemies you will be encountering in regular missions, in free roaming missions. You will be able to kill them a lot faster with the added range, which is a good thing. Now, the other thing that we need to touch upon regarding sonar is why I actually chose to reduce its power duration overall. It's a weird choice. It's an extremely weird choice, and I wouldn't blame you for discounting my build before hearing this explanation. Now, sonar begins with a duration of about 18 seconds. With fleeting expertise, you're going to be reducing that pretty heavily. But if you counteract it with constitution, you will get a total of, I believe, about 13 seconds of duration. Why? Why? Well, we've already gone heavily into power efficiency. It's not going to be extremely good. It's not going to give her the most fantastic power efficiency in the world. But because we have good power efficiency, we will be focusing on recasting sonar often instead of relying on a high duration sonar. Why do that? Well, when you're in a free roaming mission or even a defense mission, you have to get used to the fact that new enemies will be piling in pretty often. Probably more often than every 13 seconds. 13 seconds gives you enough time to kill a few enemies, but if you want to take full advantage of the fact that sonar lights up enemies on the minimap, you want to recast often. Considering that your teammates will also be killing enemies, you also want to recast often. And also considering the fact that sonar is a bit buggy, you want to recast often. It's buggy because sometimes the dots on the minimap that result from sonar just randomly disappear for apparently no reason. When someone casts a skill or does something just completely weird. Maybe it's a feature, not a bug, and they disappear when loud noises happen, because that would disrupt sonar. But I don't know, it's weird. So, unless you're fighting a boss or something especially heavy or soloing, sonar's duration is sufficient, I would say. Also, even if you're reducing its damage multiplier to 845%, it is also sufficient. But if you want to go the extra mile with the punch, you can do the redirection variant of this build and get that extra survivability and the maximum sonar multiplier. If not, if you don't favor redirection or overextend, there is enough room in this build to slot a flow instead of overextend, and that will make up for the power problems that you might be experiencing. Though if you cast with restraint, let's say, you won't have any power problems. Also, I would like to note a curious synergy between sonar and soundquake. Sometimes sonar creates weak points on the torso, and most area of effect skills and weapons hit the torso primarily, as does soundquake, I would say. So sometimes you will have a interesting synergy, because if you cast sonar before soundquake, you will find yourself dealing ludicrous amounts of damage to certain enemies and just killing them outright, even if you're not able to kill enemies normally with soundquake anymore. So that's kind of silly. You might end up using more energy that way, but it's kind of fun. It's not reliable, but it's kind of fun. So if you want to go for just overextend, you can do this with 2 forma, but I don't recommend it, again, because Banshee can be pretty brittle and you have to get used to that first. Also, as part of our push for power efficiency, I chose the Chorus Banshee helmet, which adds 10% power efficiency, for a total of 40%, 60%, 100%, minus 55%, 45% effective power efficiency, which is fairly good, especially for a Warframe like Banshee, which has 225 base power at level 30. Also, consider getting the Immortal Skin, because damn. Like, seriously. Damn. Anyway, this has been it for my build of Banshee. I hope I've covered everything that I was supposed to cover in a reasonable amount of time. Anyway, shutting up now. If you've enjoyed this video or found it informative, please remember to subscribe, like, share, comment, whatever you would consider appropriate. It really helps me out. It really helps motivate me to make more videos. And this has been Rexer of the YouTube channel NotQuiteThereGaming, signing off.